Sheen shot.
Yeah, boy.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for stopping by. Today, we are checking out every single attack skill you can buy from the Weapon Master in New Sirocco. These are the really cool skills that came out with the addition of the Three Brothers DLC for Outward. Some of these are really powerful, and each has a unique attack animation that can be very fun to use. In order to get any of these skills, you will first need to build the Gladiators Arena in your new town. This will require you to have at least 4 houses, I believe, and a town hall. You will then need to buy the Training Grounds upgrade for this building, as well as building an additional house. This will give you access to Bea Battleborn, who teaches all of the Weapon Master skills. If you are confused on what to build, just take it slow. Play through the story as much as you can until you gain most of the building upgrades. Make sure to read the upgrades because you can also purchase the Combat Academy, and we do not want that one. You will also need to collect Conqueror's medals. These can be obtained by defeating challenging combatants in the arena itself. Head over to Bruce, the Arena Master, and choose which opponent you would like to face. These enemies are all a bit challenging, so make sure to prepare yourself. Once you have a few of these medals, you can buy any skill from the Weapon Master for 3 of them. There are 10 skills in total, and each weapon type has its own unique skill. Here's what they are called and what they can do. Strafing Run is the skill on the top left and requires the use of a bow. It allows you to fire off 5 arrows while running either to the right or to the left. It has a cooldown of 100 seconds and requires at least 5 arrows to be equipped on your person. If you are trying to main a bow, it can be very helpful. Being able to fire 5 arrows rather than just 1 cuts your fighting time in half. While playing around with this skill, I didn't think it was anything special in terms of damage. This will be different depending on the bow and arrows you choose to use, but I still do not feel like it's the best thing in the world for a bow. It really just gives you another skill to use while bowing, so you don't have to do a single shot every single time. You will need to be careful in caves and other tight spaces, because running into a wall ruins the movement that it gives you. I also had issues aiming while using it, but I imagine that wouldn't be too much of an issue if you're regularly using a bow. Overall, I think this is great for bow users, because it gives them more to work with. It is not an end-all skill that you should immediately switch over to a bow for, but great to have if that is where you were at. Crescendo is the skill directly under Strafing Run, and it requires the use of a 2-handed mace. It has a cooldown of 3 seconds, making it very usable at all times. It does a quick attack that applies a stack of the Craze buff. This buff gives you extra damage per stack up to 5 stacks. It also decreases your impact resistance though, making it very easy for enemies to knock you down. You can get some crazy damage with this skill though, so it's totally worth it. You can think of the skill a lot like Probe from the Speedster skill tree. It allows you to block until after the enemy is done attacking and make a quick swing doing high damage. The amount of damage I was seeing with this skill was actually pretty good. I didn't feel it was insane or anything, but definitely something you would want to use as much as possible. 2-handed weapons tend to be a lot slower, and this skill gives you a pretty rapid attack. I think it buffs up the capabilities of a 2-handed mace quite a bit. I do think you won't be able to use this skill very well if you have lower amounts of stamina. The blocking and attacking required can quickly drain your energy, leaving you defenseless. Great skill though, and I would rank it within the top 5 from this skill tree. Moment of Truth is directly under Crescendo, and it requires the use of a 2-handed sword. It has a cooldown of 15 seconds, meaning you could use it more than once in a single fight if you needed to. It consists of high damage strike, ignoring 50% of enemies' resistances. This means it does a lot of damage. The downside with this skill is that it inflicts drawback on you upon using the skill. This is a status effect that reduces your resistances by 50%. It only lasts 15 seconds, meaning you could either use it at the end of the fight or just block until the effect runs out. It is important that this effect be on the skill, otherwise it would be way too overpowered. You take quite a bit of damage if you get hit while the effect is active, but 2-handed sword users can easily avoid getting hit by simply dodging or blocking. I prefer to use this skill as much as I can rather than wait till the enemy is almost dead. This is because it takes such a good chunk of the enemy's health out that you kind of wasting your time if you're not using it. Another great way to play with this skill is to knock the enemy down with your other skills, and then unleash this unholy attack on them while they are unable to defend themselves. This skill is also in my top 5 favorites from this skill tree, and I had a lot of fun using it. Lower level enemies in particular get shredded by this skill, and it's super fun to watch. The Technique is directly under Moment of Truth, and it requires the use of a one-handed sword. It has a cooldown of 120 seconds, making it only usable once a fight. The skill unleashes 6 rapid strikes and also burns 10 of your stamina. Honestly, the most mediocre skill of this tree. It is really good in terms of taking out your enemy's health, but the problem is you can only use it once, and most of the time you will end up getting hit while using it if you're fighting more than one enemy. It takes too long to complete the animation, and since swords are so quick in that department, it kind of ruins it a bit for me. It could be used as a finisher, and I think that would be okay. But don't expect it to be the only skill you use. I think a sword user could pick a set of skills without using this and be way better off. If you are still intent on using it though, it is pretty fun to see enemies get melted by the quick repetitive attacks. I would pair it with something hard-hitting like the Sar sword. Higher amounts of damage could make it really good. If you are playing only sword, then this is a pretty fantastic skill. You get a much more powerful attack that hits hard. Just remember that it takes a bit of stamina to use, so don't walk into a fight without regen on or you won't be able to use it at all. In the very middle of this skill tree, we have Vicious Cycle, which requires the use of a spear. It has a cooldown of 120 seconds, making it only usable once in a fight. It inflicts crippled and slowdown on your enemies, while also hitting with high impact. Your enemy will basically be 75% slower once you hit them with this. That is what it is good for. Do not expect it to do a lot of damage. It is not great in that department, but slowing your enemies by such an amount can be a game changer. Larger enemies simply won't be able to catch you very easily, and you can hit them with the spear attacks left and right while they attempt to defend themselves. I initially thought this skill was pretty bad since I wasn't getting much damage out of it. In reality, it is meant to give you a tactical advantage rather than killing your prey. I got hit quite a bit while testing this skill, completely negating the attack. Make sure your enemy is all the way done attacking before you use it, otherwise it's a gigantic waste. Overall, Vicious Cycle is not one of my favorite skills, but I also don't really play with a spear. If you're loving the long-range melee attacks of the spear, then you should get this skill as soon as possible. It could greatly improve your capabilities and let you beat some of those harder enemies without immediately crapping your pants. The skill in the middle, very bottom section of the Weapon Master is called Scalp Collector, and it requires the use of a one-handed axe. It has a cooldown of 30 seconds, making it possible to use at the beginning and end of a fight. The skill inflicts bleeding on hit and will grant you the kill streak buff if you manage to kill an enemy with it. This provides you with 20% more damage, 10% more speed, 50% stability gained, but also negative 25 impact dealt. This skill is great because of bleeding. Anytime you can bleed your enemies, you're immediately giving yourself a bit of an advantage. This is kind of where this skill stops being interesting though. I found it did very little damage and left me open to attacks much too easily. I also hated the fact that the buff was hard to get. You pretty much have to get an enemy to the lowest health possible and then hit them again with Scalp Collector. The buff is pretty nice if you can get it. I'm not going to complain about that. However, it just isn't very powerful. I felt like if I were maining an axe, then I would use this just for bleed, and then not much else. In a prolonged combat scenario, you would want as many skills as you can get that help you win. Axe users should be sure to grab this and get the most out of it. I'm not even saying it's a bad skill, just probably one of the worst on this skill tree. Don't expect this skill to be a game changer. It can be utilized and very helpful in the right situations, but you're not going to be gunning to use it as much as possible. Head over and grab it because it is still great for axe users, and any amount of increase in speed is always helpful. The skill on the top right is called Vital Crash, and it has a cooldown of 60 seconds. Of all the skills here, this one is probably the most unique. It is basically a tackle that requires the use of gauntlets. The more health and stamina you have, the more damage and impact it does. You can get rid of a good chunk of an enemy's health bar with one attack, but it does come at a cost. You will also be inflicted with pain and cripple upon using the skill. Pain gives you 25% less physical resistance, and confusion gives you 25% less impact resistance. Gauntlets alone do some crazy damage, so this skill can really make you demolish some monsters. I enjoyed the distance at which this skill will hit quite a bit. There's definitely a lot of potential with this one since it hits like a tidal wave, and you can then go into some quick and repetitive attacks. Gauntlets are probably one of the strongest weapons in Outward, and this skill only makes them better. I would be careful with this skill since pain and cripple are pretty bad to have on yourself, but I didn't really feel like they killed my gameplay or anything. Try using this at the beginning and end of your battles, and see which one works better for you. The Speedster tree would pair nicely with this, giving you 2 high damage tackles in short succession. Very fun skill, and I recommend you try it out even if you don't main gauntlets. It's a lot of fun to use. Splitter is the skill directly under Vital Crash, and it has a cooldown of 45 seconds. You must use a pole arm to activate this skill. The exact description is a leaping strike that grants short immunity and increases in power as the enemy's life decreases. It will also burn 5 stamina and health upon use. You pretty much do a wide leap with your weapon and attack the enemy sort of in the air. This prevents you from taking damage while in the animation. You can deal quite a lot of damage to an enemy, but it's important that you mostly use this skill to finish off the fight. When an enemy has full health, it does not do a whole lot. However, an enemy with low health will instantly get wrecked. I like to use the special attack of the polearm to get in a couple quick jabs. Once the enemy's health is around half-ish, you can try to finish them off with Splitter. It won't always kill them, but it will at least get them close to death. I think this might be the most fun skill in the game just because the animation of the attack is so acrobatic. You can leap into the air and crash down on your enemies with a tremendous blow. I did find that it was really easy to miss with this skill if you attack when an enemy starts their attack. Sometimes your foe will simply push too far forwards while you rush around them and end up not getting hit at all. It will take some getting used to, but Splitter definitely packs a punch and can be used to decimate any who stand in your way. Now for my least favorite skill of all time. Warrior's Vein is directly under Splitter and has a cooldown of 50 seconds. You will need to use a two-handed axe to activate this skill. It is a counterattack that strikes back with high damage and impact while inflicting extreme bleeding. Sounds good, but it also inflicts you with extreme bleeding. Yeah, you literally get to bleed to death while fighting. Awesome. It does some decent damage. Problem is that extreme bleeding causes your enemy to bleed out over time. You kind of have to be alive for that to be any good, and extreme bleeding can quickly kill you. Don't plan on bandaging up either, because bandages have the longest animation in the game. You get quite a bit of time after the initial press for the counterattack to take place, which is pretty nice. Most counterattacks are hard to hit since you have to time it just right. This one is relatively easy to use, and if you're using the right axe, it could do some amazing damage. I recommend only using it as an end-of-fight skill, since you will be bleeding after, and that's not great. I think Warrior's Vein has possibility, and it is pretty unique for two-handed axe users. Will I ever use it? No, probably not. If you have seen this skill before and know a better way to use it, please comment down below because I really find it a difficult skill to use since extreme bleeding is never something I want to inflict on myself. Maybe a no mana build with tons of health could work, but I still don't like it that much. Either way, that is Warrior's Vein, and who knows, maybe you will like it more than I did. The last skill in the Weapon Master skill tree is called Dispersion, and it has a cooldown of 120 seconds. You will need a one-handed mace to use it. This skill creates a massive shockwave that damages your enemies. It massively destabilizes you, making any hits you take pretty much instantly knock you down. The cool thing about Dispersion is that any imbue or element you have placed on your mace gets transferred to the enemy. This works similar to a hex. The enemy will take more damage from whatever element you use on that mace. Your imbue will also stay on the mace, giving you time to actually use that damage bonus. I absolutely love this skill. It does amazing damage, and being able to apply a hex with an attack is fantastic. You feel super powerful too, since you can smash the ground around you and damage everyone near you. The only weakness this skill has is that it destabilizes you. But that really isn't the worst thing in the world. Just dodge backwards and wait until you stabilize. Much better than bleeding yourself. This skill is very versatile and can be great with any mace. You get a tremendous amount of power from it, and it pairs well since the mace's main skill causes it to block an imbue and infuse it into your weapon. Wait till an enemy shoots an element at you, block it, and then smash the ground, making them weak to it. One of my favorite skills in all of Outward, and very helpful for prolonged fights. Definitely a skill worth your time, and one of the first ones you should try out. It does take 30 stamina to use, so make sure you're stocking up on water and gaberries. There you go, guys. Those are all the weapon skills you can learn from the new Weapon Master in the Gladiators Arena. You will need to be able to fight harder enemies to attain any of these skills, since the arena isn't for weak characters. But if you can handle yourself in a fight, you get a nice reward in the form of a new skill. Hopefully this video got you excited to use more of these skills, and you are now ready to build your town and get to fighting. Be sure to leave a like down below, and as always, I will see you in the next video.